Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 27th season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 24/7 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Andrew Clay, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction, if you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
For the first time in program history, Penn State is in the college football playoffs, a game coming to us in Happy Valley. On today's show, Mike Irwin swings by to preview the Nittany Lions and SMU. We'll talk about Penn State's postseason path, how the teams compare, and so much more. So let's not delay this any longer. Let's kick off the latest edition of Nittany Nation Overtime.
What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, spin on live, you don't believe it, just watch.
And welcome into another episode of Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Andrew Clay, Mark Brennan, Neil Riddell, Mike Irwin filling out the Nitwits this week. We start talking about Penn State and SMU. The college football playoffs are here, guys. How does this matchup compare? How do these two teams compare and contrast?
Well, SMU can score, and I think that's presents a challenge right away. I was kind of surprised they made it, to be honest, that the ACC got a second team in even after SMU lost. Penn State has history with SMU way back in the Cotton Bowl in 48. They played them, in the late 70s as well. But, certainly a different type of an opponent than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, it's a high-scoring team. It's going to be interesting to see how the Penn State defense reacts after really laying an egg in the Big Ten championship game. So was that an aberration, or have people kind of figured out the tricks to beating this team? That said, I don't think that SMU has this type of overall talent that Oregon had, and I think anybody who watched that Oregon game, I came away from that with kind of a new respect for Dillon Gabriel. I mean, I thought he was good. I didn't realize he was that good. So it's going to be a real test for the Penn State defense after laying an egg. Time to step up.
Well, we got a real favorable draw with SMU first. We're 8.5-point favorites, I think, now going into the game, and they're lucky to get in, and I don't think they'll last too long. I hope not. Anyway,
you're tipping off your pick early here, Mike.
I think we know where Mike's going.
I might pick 2 times early. Anyway.
Well, right about the favorable draw. I mean, and there's a lot of people complaining about that. I mean, here you have Oregon has a tougher draw, although they have one less game. But Penn State really is sitting here with SMU and Boise State. They have a pretty good path.
Yeah, I want to comment something on you said, Mark, about what Penn State was defensively did. I don't think Oregon did anything Bowling Green didn't do to Penn State. Penn State just never figured out how to counter it like they did Bowling Green. You talk about, Neil, though, that bracket. Let's bring up the bracket. We have it right here. If you take a look at Penn State, like you said, it is a real favorable match. You get by SMU, then you got Boise State, and then you're on to the semifinals where you could face Georgia, Indiana, maybe even Notre Dame. I actually weirdly think if Indiana can make it to the semifinal, that's a scary matchup because Indiana becomes a team of destiny at that point and will have all of the momentum in the world. This is a pretty easy draw. It's very advantageous to the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, and actually, if they make it to Georgia, you're looking at a team with
maybe without a quarterback.
Yeah, without a quarterback. So could it have been better? I don't think so. But I will say this: after driving back from Indianapolis and listening to the draw and hearing people complaining about the way this is working out, I would say that I agree with the fact that the conference champs shouldn't automatically get 4 of those top seeds. But this whole thing about reseeding and whatnot is just ridiculous. This format, similar, has worked perfectly for the NCAA basketball tournament for years. So enough of the complaining. You're in your bracket, do what you need to do. You don't hear teams in the NCAA basketball tournament complaining, I'm the number 1 seed. Oh, I'm going to get, the 8-9 winner if I get to round 2. Just take care of what's ahead of you.
Well, I think that's one thing James is good at, one of the things. I mean, making the main thing, and not being
Thanks, Mike Tomlin.
negative about a draw and creating some distractions for yourself. But hey, this is great that it's the 12 teams, but they probably need some tweaks when you come out of this. I don't think that Arizona State and some of these teams are, when you can look at that and say, here's Boise State. Penn State's already listed as a 2-touchdown favorite against them if they match up. So how could Boise State be 3?
But Georgia State or Georgia? Well, no,
Georgia. Georgia would be the next game after Boise State. So that game, I think you'd be looking at Penn State as being an underdog finally.
Can I just say, I actually like the format, and I like the automatic buys. When they went to 12 teams, they said, well, the regular season isn't going to matter. Then they said the conference championships aren't going to matter. How did they make all that matter? They added buys in to have teams play for something. So I'm okay with this setup. I don't hate the reseeding, but it's year 1 and we haven't even gotten to the playoffs and everyone wants to change the system. We all just need to calm down, take deep breaths, and see how the next month plays ahead. And how does it play ahead for Penn State? What does James Franklin need to do here over the next couple weeks to kind of stave off the haters? What are the expectations here for the Nittany Lions here?
Well, they're going to win the national championship or it's failure.
Okay, sounds good to me.
I'm just kidding. I think they got to win 2 games, okay? They're going to be favored against, these aren't blue bloods. This isn't Georgia or Oregon or even Texas. So I think they got to win 2 games to wipe away some of the narrative. I think, you look back and they crash into the semifinals. Then I think you're playing kind of with house money, and you can really, maybe some pressure would be off. But to me, they got to win 2 games.
Yeah, everybody talked about Penn State being a team that was going to benefit the most from the field expanding, and Penn State did benefit, and it's got a good draw. If Penn State loses this first game, the season's a disappointment. I don't care that you won 11 games. If you want to compete at that level that you're talking about competing at, it's a disappointment. I'm with Neil. I think you got to win that second game to make it a really, really good season, and then everything after that is gravy.
What I was going to say is SMU had the 60th easiest schedule, and Clemson was 85th. So they had the easier schedules, and for that matter, getting through these next 2 games is a real strong possibility, I would say.
Well, it's kind of interesting, too, with the Belichick hiring, as we tape this. The ACC has got to feel kind of good about itself right now. They got 2 teams into the tournament. Now you have a national draw going forward. But I agree, Mike. The ACC has not played the kind of schedule that that Penn State has played.
I will say one thing. Your heart goes out to Alabama because they've never gotten the benefit of the doubt.
My God.
It's like, play a violin, right? Play a violin
I can't
for
even
Alabama.
get started talking about Alabama because they weren't even the SEC team that should have gotten in.
And they lost
if
Oklahoma by 3 touchdowns.
South Carolina has a much bigger gripe than Alabama. One quick thought, though. Yes, Penn State needs to beat SMU. I think saying Penn State will roll over Boise State, calling them a 2-touchdown favorite, is a disservice to the Broncos. That is a very good football team that almost beat Oregon at the beginning of the year. That's a good team. I don't think we should discredit how good the Broncos have been, and Ashton Genty should be the Heisman winner. So I don't want to discredit the Broncos.
Well, don't kill the messenger. I mean, this is what Vegas is saying.
Yeah, I'm not. We can talk about who the messenger is here. Hey, we're going to keep talking about this game when we come back. A little this and that, players with pressure on them. We'll have that when we return.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. And by Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Back on Nittany Nation Overtime, Penn State getting set to take on SMU in the college football playoff opening round. Guys, I want to play a little this, then that about this game. If Penn State does this, then that will happen.
Well, I think they got to get a handle on SMU's passing game, because it's not just, and Gabriel was tremendous, and so is that Tez Johnson. But Penn State has been vulnerable to the pass somewhat this year. They kind of missed Winston more in this game than they did, the entire season. So I think Penn State has to do better defensively than they did against Oregon.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that and say if Penn State scores 30,
Thank you for doing this right,
then Penn State wins, because I do think this defense will be motivated. I mean, that was an uncharacteristic performance, albeit against a really, really good team. So I think they're going to be motivated. I think you're going to see what Oregon was able to do to make things kind of work, and I think they'll tighten up. And so if Penn State, if the offense gets to 30, then Penn State wins.
I think the thing they got to look out for is a passing game. Against Ohio State and Oregon, the pass defense was terrible. And, I was trying to think about what kind of pass defense they should use if they go man-to-man or zone. And like Oregon was just too quick for them. I mean, and Ohio State was, in fact, that's where Ohio State made their mistakes against Oregon. They kept trying to run the ball. They should have thrown down and outs and got the ball moving better. But
Okay, I'll play your game the way you want it to.
Please do.
If Penn State makes 4 personal fouls that it's called for in the first quarter, they're probably not going to win. Okay?
You don't
and this
win
stuff's
those
been
games.
going on. These little, I know the face masks are different, but, the chippiness that has hurt them in their 2 big losses.
Yeah.
So
I know I missed the Oregon postgame show, but I thought the interesting coming out of Oregon with how badly the defense played, I thought was A.J. Harris saying after the game that they really weren't prepared for what Oregon did offensively, and it took way too long to adjust. There looked like so much confusion in that first half when guys are still looking at the sideline with their hands up in the air. Penn State took way too long to adjust. So if Penn State is properly ready for SMU, I don't think there's a chance SMU has coming up here in the cold, maybe snow on the ground. I think if Penn State is properly prepared, they will win this game.
okay, I mean, you dismissed a little bit Boise State a week later.
But I think Boise State is a much better team than SMU.
Yeah.
I don't think SMU is nearly as good of a team as Boise State. Boise State has a Heisman Trophy winner who probably won't win it because he plays at Boise State, but they have a Heisman Trophy finalist who could or should win this.
Well, then how's Penn State a bigger favorite on a neutral field?
Look, I don't know why Vegas does what they do, and I can't pretend to know.
Neil does.
All I'm saying is you can't discount Boise State, but I think Penn State has a massive upper hand against SMU. Moving on here real quick, what players, what Nittany Lions right now have the most pressure going into this postseason run?
Mike, I'd like to get your opinion on how Drew Aller played against Oregon. As a former player, what did you see?
I thought he played real well in the beginning. Well, the last pass play was a bad call, I think. They should have just kept doing what they were doing. But Howard played well when he was in there. He was consistent and threw the ball over the middle and across the middle. But when he went deep on that one just for 50-50 catch, that was a bad call, I think. I mean, should have kept doing what they were doing. They were running the ball well.
Yeah, they really were running the ball well. I would think that they're going to get back to that in this game. I mean, I'm sure James had a taste in his mouth that they got away from the run again.
They had over 500 yards rushing, right?
No, 290 rushing.
290.
Is Aller the one that has the most pressure in this playoff run?
No, I think the secondary does. They've played well almost the entire year, and they just didn't play a good game. And I think one player in particular, Jalen Reed, he's got a lot in front of him. I mean, he has an opportunity to do some really good things in the NFL, but that was kind of a step back, I think, for the entire secondary, and for them to kind of get back to where they were, and for Jalen Reed to reestablish himself as a first 3 or 4 round draft pick. I think it's a big game for him. It's a big playoff for him.
Yeah, and the same with the receivers. Collectively
that's
as a
like
group.
sailed.
Yeah, it did. Wallace played well in that last couple series and made a really tough catch in the end zone, made a couple big plays to keep him within spitting distance. So he's another guy and I'll throw out Barker. I mean, the last couple games, that special teams unit has fallen down a little bit.
Mike,
Well, he only missed one field goal, though.
He missed one, he had one block the previous week.
Well, that wasn't his fault.
Mike, who do you think has the most to prove in the playoffs?
Who has improved?
Who has the most to
player.
prove in the
Who has
playoffs?
improved? I'd say the wideouts. They mostly, they're outside of Warren. I mean, the other wideouts. Wallace has been decent, but Fleming and some of those guys need to step up. And
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I see
Fleming's
Clifford.
kind of not playing
Yeah,
at
I see
all.
Clifford and Fleming targeted combined once against Oregon, and I'm thinking if you're depending on that wideout crew to carry you in the playoffs, you're in trouble. I mean, they better go with what they were doing: the tight ends and the running backs catching the ball out of the backfield with Trey Wallace doing some things.
Bonus question, quick. Seeing Keandre Lambert-Smith
Gene
second.
Rayburn didn't fire this
Second
kind of
in the SEC, Keandre Lambert is second in the SEC in receiving on a team that was below 500. How much does that hurt as someone who's been around Penn State?
Not having Lambert Smith?
Yeah, watching him do what he did on a bad
You know
Auburn
what?
team.
I didn't think he was that great at Penn State. He had a lot of drops. He's played better than I thought he would. He really did. I didn't think he was going to be the huge loss, especially when they got Fleming. I thought he'd be better.
He was so inconsistent that you couldn't really rely on him. At the end of the day, Penn State right now is second in the Big Ten in total yardage per game, 1 yard behind Oregon. So they're getting it done, and that's my point. You could do it with your tight ends. You could do it with Singleton out of the backfield. Your wideouts didn't get it done this year. And if you're expecting them to pick it up now, or if you're expecting to bring Keandre Lambert-Smith back, which you can't do, obviously, they got to go with what got them here.
I think it's been a disappointment, their wideouts. I mean,
Sure.
If you look at Ohio State and Oregon, they have outstanding wideouts. And Penn State has guys that are okay. Omari Evans is all right.
I thought he came on. I don't know what the deal was, why it took so long. Last year was the same thing. He started making plays late in the year. Maybe he's not a practice player. I don't really know. But I think he's a guy that maybe can get more opportunities than he's gotten.
And Clifford hasn't done much either. I mean,
Right.
But he's a possibility, I guess. I look at these receivers and try to figure out who's the best among the worst.
Well, we had plenty of spot news this week. Andy Kotelnicki, KJ Winston. We're going to talk about those stories when we come back. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
The NitWits are being brought to you by RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. And by Harry's Construction. If you can dream it, we can create it.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Back on Nittany Nation Overtime, guys. A lot of spot news this week, and it started with the news that Andy Kotelnicki wasn't leaving to go to West Virginia. What was your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it helps, especially if Aller comes back next year. You have a lot of continuity. I think Andy had a good year, brought all kinds of creativity, the use of the tight end. So I think that's good news, because I can't imagine if you were to be hired by West Virginia that he could wait a month maybe to go there. So he would have had to leave.
Yeah, I think this makes it much more likely that Aller comes back. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Singleton comes back. I mean, I think we're starting to see what he's all about when he's healthy. And as I mentioned before, you look at how good this offense was just in terms of yardage. I mean, they did that without receivers, and that brings us up to something else we'll talk about. I mean, there are clear needs that they're going to have to approach in the portal, and I think having an established offensive coordinator is going to help them get some of the players they may need.
Mike, how would you grade the job this offense has done this year, improving from last year?
I think he's done a very good job. I mean, more offense than they've ever had. Offensively is not the problem. I mean, offensively, we're really top of our game. And I think we can move the ball against anyone, and we've proven that. So I don't think that would be a real problem. So I'd say he's done an excellent job. But I'm glad he's not going to West Virginia, but I don't think that would be a good move for him anyway.
I agree with you. I don't think it was a good move. And I thought West Virginia, they thought...
I mean, why not? Why would that not have been a good move for him?
I don't think West Virginia is the kind of place that has a much higher ceiling than where they've been at this 8-9 wins.
I mean, the guy's banging his head against the wall and might want to be a head coach. He has experience in the Big 12.
But
he's coming off a real high now. His stock may not be higher.
Really good year at Penn State, and he'll be able to land an even better job. Yeah. Again, I think West Virginia has a cap.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think is gambling the right word? I don't know. I mean, Neil, you know about all the gambling stuff, but
what's Vegas say, Neil?
Yeah, what's Vegas? No, but in all honesty,
they had Jimbo Fisher as the favorite to get
he's in a situation where look at what they did in year one.
Yeah.
With guys he didn't recruit. And now you're not going to have a full team of guys you recruited next year, but again, if you're able to address some things in the portal, and if you're able to, if those things play out, he could put himself in a much better position in year two. I mean, look what Manny Diaz did a couple years ago. He spent 2 years at Penn State, ends up getting an ideal situation, and has done really well for himself.
Another person we do know who's not coming back next year, it's KJ Winston, declared for the NFL draft. I think we all saw this coming in some shape or another. What was your reaction?
I wasn't surprised. I mean, James mentioned fairly early on that they had, maybe during one of the open weeks, that they went down to Maryland. So he wasn't really with the team, and they were meeting with him and his family, I guess, or representatives on trying to get him to come back either later this year or next. So I don't think that was a surprise.
Yeah, he's an NFL level player. I think the disappointing thing for him is going to be he's not going to be drafted as high as he would have been had he been healthy.
Correct.
But he's going to have an opportunity to prove himself. We saw Parker Washington do this a couple years ago. Remember, wide receiver, was injured at the end, ends up going to Jacksonville, and has done really well for himself. So he's again betting on himself, gambling on himself a little bit, and I think it's going to work out long term.
But how about all this NIL money? For a guy like Singleton, would they pay him more money to stay on the team? It seems like they're headed that direction.
Oh, sure. That's all in play with the negotiations behind the scenes on, not only guys that are on the team, but people that you might be bringing in the transfer portal.
I assume he's making some money off of that giant mural on the side of the hotel in State College, right? Do you think he's getting a couple bucks for that?
But I think Mike hit this right on the head. I'm surprised that NIL wasn't enough to bring him back because of how bad his draft stock fell, given that he basically didn't play this entire season. And he was already kind of in a I still need to prove myself mode.
I wonder if he's one of these guys, though, Andrew, who went into this year thinking this is going to be my final season. Yep. He saw where he was grading and on the NFL.
But he's not going to grade there anymore.
Right. But my point being, when you take that mindset, it could be tough to back yourself out of it. And maybe this was just something that's like, this is my plan, I'm going to stick with it.
When we come back, one final block. It's time to make our picks. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Don't miss a minute of Nittany Nation Overtime, now also on Apple and Spotify.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Well, guys, it's been a good year to be sitting in this seat for the Nitwit of the Week. Andrew, that's me, and Ryan, and even Riley, we've kind of cleaned up this year. We're going to be Nitwit of the Year. So I guess I'm starting with the picks for SMU. I'm going to go with 34-14. I think Penn State is going to command. I think the weather, too, and the cold is going to play a big factor.
I like how he's referring to himself by his own name. Isn't there like a Seinfeld episode where Jimmy, listen, I think I mentioned at Penn State if they score 30, I think they're going to be in good shape. I think they're going to get there 31-21 Penn State.
I'm going to say 32-26 Penn State.
35-24 Penn State.
Okay.
Well, one thing that does concern me, 2 weeks ago against Maryland, Penn State put the ball on the ground way too much. They were really bothered by that cold. I don't know if they've gotten any better holding a cold ball.
I would say SMU had 6 turnovers in a game against Duke. So both of these teams, you got to be real careful, and that could be a key in one of these games.
MSU coming north, that'll be a little difficult for them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when Penn State takes on SMU Saturday, December 21st at noon. For our Nitwit crew, Mike Irwin, Neil Riddell, Mark Brendan, I'm Andrew Clay. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching WTAJ's Nittany Nation Overtime.
The Nitwits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction, if you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.